Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to the first episode of 6 of the Best. This is an actor series. In this channel I am guilty of not really talking about actors as much as I do directors. So I thought it would just be a fun exercise just to do 6 of the best. Obviously this is subjective, of certain actors. Again, unlike the director series, this is not a run of 6 films in a row. This is just 6 films from their career. And obviously the caveat is I have to have them in my collection so I can actually show you the physical media release. But again, this is another series where you're the most important part of, so I would like to see your favourite 6 performances or films of a certain actor. So today we're going to talk about Sean Connery, who is obviously more famous for being James Bond, but I'm not really a Bond aficionado. Again, if you don't know, I only have 2 James Bond films, and both of them are not really for James Bond. One is A View to a Kill for Christopher Walken, and the other is Live and Let Die for Yaphet Kotto. So these 6 films are not Bond films. I'm going to start with 1961's Frightened City. Even though Sean Connery is on the cover, he's perhaps not the main character. This is a wonderful little British film starring Herbert Lom and John Gregson. But Sean Connery plays... the back cover says he's not a thug, he's just a petty criminal, but he's pretty much a thug, an enforcer that Herbert Lom uses to kind of take over everybody's rackets, to just have one boss in the city of London instead of all the different bosses in all the different boroughs. It's just a wonderful little film, and a kind of rough and ready performance by Connery. Certainly not the finished article, but quite a few of these films kind of lean on his physical stature and kind of intimidating presence that perhaps the Bond films don't really kind of go into, or some of his later films he'll kind of loses that edge. But some of these films he has that kind of animalistic, physical threat of violence performance. So we'll go to 1971 for another example of that, and that's the Anderson tapes. This is the wonderful Indicator release, also co-starring Diane Cannon and Martin Balsam, Alan King, and obviously Christopher Walken. That's 2 Sean Connery films, and I've mentioned Christopher Walken twice. Don't you worry, there'll be a Christopher Walken episode of 6 of the Best, in case you're worried sick about that. Again, this is Sidney Lumet, and this is a wonderful little film where we're seeing surveillance of a score that Connery has arranged once he gets out of prison, and we kind of know what's going to happen, but we just watch it anyway. And again, in this performance, Connery is very violent and animalistic. The way he treats Diane Cannon at times isn't necessarily very gentlemanly. But again, it's that physicality and that kind of threat of violence. And I'm going to say the same thing about the next film. It's 1972's The Offence, co-starring Ian Bannon and Trevor Howard, again directed by Sidney Lumet. And it's almost Bad Lieutenant before Bad Lieutenant, but again, this is not necessarily sexual. This is just pure beating up a suspect. It's a very strange, odd little film. It probably has more stylistic flourishes than most Sidney Lumet films. Interesting camera work, whereas Lumet generally has a kind of flat visual style. The Offence is, I wouldn't go as far as say it's like an experimental film, but it certainly has an interesting look. And again, Connery plays not a very likeable character, caught with a drinking problem, an obsession about punishing suspects or criminals or people he thinks might be a criminal. It's a pretty brutal film. 112 minutes, it's probably a bit too long, but there's a real ferociousness about Connery's character and his performance. Obviously he went through a period in his career distancing himself from Bond, because obviously it's synonymous with that, and in general he's everybody's favourite Bond. But these performances of men on the edge or at breaking point or past breaking point are really wonderful and well worth checking out. Then we're going to go to 1974, one of the oddest films ever made. I think we can all think back on the first time we ever saw Zardos. This is a lovely steelbook. It's one of my favourite steelbooks. And that's the back. And there's the inside. It's just a beautiful steelbook, one of my favourites. John Boorman's Zardos is fairly unique, I would say. There's not too many films that are like Zardos. Production design, the world building is wonderful. The kind of satire on what you would do if you lived forever. Nobody really talks about it. You'd be bored out of your mind. The kind of need and the clash between the primal and the artistic, the creative and the earthy, the instinctual. It's just a wonderful, odd film that just gets better every time you watch it now. And obviously the reason for the title is a nice little reveal. And then 1976, I've talked about this film quite a lot. At the time, or when I was a lot younger, when I saw it, I didn't really appreciate it for what it is. But Richard Lester's Robin and Marion is just one of my favourite films of all time now. Sean Connery as an old Robin Hood. It's just a great film about older love between Robin and Marion. An older couple. I mean, in this film, Marion's become a nun. And like quite a lot of Richard Lester films, it has just an obscene cast. Audrey Hepburn, Robert Shaw, Ronnie Barker, Richard Harris, Denham Elliott, who have I forgotten? Nicole Williamson, Kenneth Haig, Ian Holm. I mean, it is ridiculous. It's a great film about ageing. It's a great film about living up to reputation and myth and legend. It's got one of the best fight scenes of all time between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery as older men who are like struggling to throw swords at each other pretty much. Robert Shaw is having an absolute blast in this film. It's just so good, and it has a fantastic 70s ending. So that's Robin and Marion. And then finally, again, if you're familiar with the channel, this will be no surprise. We're going to go to 1981 and High Noon in Space, Outland, a film that I absolutely adore. Great support, Francis Sternhagen and Peter Boyle. This is High Noon in Space, like I said, directed by Peter Hyams. This is Sean Connery as a marshal on a mining operation who's trying to keep order as people seem to be going mad and killing themselves or hurting other people. He tries to get to the bottom of it. I just love this performance because he's completely jaded, he's completely worn out. There's a reason why he's been sent here. We never really find that out, but it's kind of a nice touch. His wife leaves him early in the film, so you don't have that kind of, because how many times do you see a family member being used like as a hostage by the bad guys or whatever? So that's just taken out completely. Because she worries about his son, because their son has never actually been to Earth, because they're always following Sean Connery about from job to job. James B. Seeking's really good as a friendly face. This is one of those films that for years it was only available in a really dark print and you couldn't really see where the money went, but on Blu-ray, on a big screen, you can really see the production design, the sets. And again, there's a nice theory in the internet that this actually takes place in the same universe as Alien. You can kind of see that the mining corporation facility could be owned by Weyland-Yutani. It's got that same dirty, grimy feel of too many people stuck together in the middle of nowhere. It's just a great performance by Connery, as I say, because he's jaded. There is a hint that he's perhaps taken or looked the other way at some point in another job. But in this job, he's kind of drawing the line and doing something about it. And his relationship with Francis Sternhagen is the similarly burnt out doctor on the facility. Their banter is just absolutely wonderful, as they kind of take jabs at each other, but they kind of like and respect each other. At the same time, nice odd cameo by Stephen Berkoff doing Stephen Berkoff things. It's just an absolutely wonderful film, and a really good Sean Connery performance. Not necessarily a really wonderfully amazing heroic performance. And like I said, Peter Boyle's fantastic as the guy who kind of runs the operation. He has that wonderful round smiling face, but behind it is obviously lots of threats. The thing that Peter Boyle does so well in films. So that's my 6 of the best for Sean Connery. Please leave your comments below what 6 of your favourite Sean Connery performances, and hopefully you'll join me for more episodes of 6 of the best for actors. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.